Especially in this day and age of inflation, pay rate expectations can be kind of a hairy subject.
I love bookkeeping.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be continuing our How to Hire series, but we also have an announcement that we want to make. And that is that this is actually Melissa and I's last episode on the I Love Bookkeeping podcast. After this season, next season, Ben will be taking back over as host. And we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And we have so enjoyed being your co-hosts and hearing from you guys and talking to you guys and hearing all your feedback. So we're sad to be saying goodbye, but we're happy to look forward to the future. Melissa, obviously bittersweet. We have put in so much effort, but we've also had so much fun. Just the banter between us, especially off the recording that people don't hear, has been so much fun.
For sure. Yeah. I was telling everybody that my favorite job was getting paid to talk to Hannah. So definitely bittersweet. But I look forward to listening to I Love Bookkeeping next season now that it's not just going to be my own voice.
I know. It's going to be so much less cringe to hear it when it's not my voice, because that is the absolute worst, just hearing your own voice.
The worst.
But today we're going to finish up our How to Hire series, and we are going to talk on pay rate expectations. Especially in this day and age of inflation, pay rate expectations can be kind of a hairy subject.
Definitely. I think on both sides too, when we're talking about going to offer a position to somebody, how are you determining what to offer? That's a really hard math to figure out what you can afford versus what you want to say somebody's worth, essentially. And then when you're trying to take a job, whether you're subcontracting or an employee job, it's the negotiation game is really difficult right now.
Yeah. It's hard. And it's like everyone has a different expectation, and you kind of have to manage those expectations. And that gets tough because you're hiring employees or you're hiring a subcontractor. It can also be really complex with hiring virtually because you have people in different parts of the country that have different kind of expectations for pay. So let's say you live in a more expensive city, you're going to be expected to get paid more versus somebody who needs less to live on in a smaller town. So how do you kind of navigate that?
That's so interesting because that's exactly why so many people, when we went to work from home that were living in, say California, Silicon Valley, when they got the option to work from home, they left those areas, right? And so cost of living is something that you do need to consider, but to a point, because at the end of the day, can your business afford it? So we have set pay rates for positions with some slight flexibility depending on certifications that the prospect might have, different education, experience, things like that kind of allow you to move between a range. But I have never moved outside that range because someone's like, well, I live in California. Well, then I'm going to find a candidate that lives in South Carolina and just go with them instead.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for anybody that does have a higher cost of living, when it comes to the virtual world now, we have so many more options as employers. And I'm going to find good talent across the country that can work in my pay range.
Yeah. And I think it really, honestly, you kind of have to take the personal aspect out of it, and you have to hire within your budget ultimately, because what you don't want to do is bankrupt yourself to have somebody who needs X amount of dollars per hour because they live in San Francisco versus somebody who needs a lot less because they live in a smaller town with lower taxes. So do you, when you're going into hiring, do you typically already have a number in mind and then you ask, or do you like to hear from your potential employee first?
Oh yeah, we already have a number in mind. And I put that, we talked about this a few episodes ago with the job description and the job posting, I put that information on there. I put the range on there so that they have an idea of the pay rate when they apply.
Right.
Now, people don't always listen to that. And I do always ask them what their pay expectations are. And I've had people come in higher than the range. And then I'm like, well, this is the range.
Yeah.
So, we did talk about you can't offer other benefits if you can't meet the range, but I always have a number in mind going into it. But then I do also ask them as well, because we're talking about pay rate expectations, and expectations go both ways. So right at the beginning, I want to know what their expectations are, and I let them know what mine are, so that if it's not a good fit, if we're way off, then we can just stop this now.
So have you ever been in a scenario where you're interviewing like the dream employee and you can't afford them?
No. I'm interviewing somebody right now, and I made an offer, and it was a little bit lower than what they wanted, but we're negotiating, and I can still afford it. Luckily, they haven't been outside of the window. It was probably the first time I would ever consider going outside of the window. But I really had to look back and be like, this is what the numbers say. Like, I have to go with what I put parameters in place for a reason. It's not fair to my current employees. It's not fair to other employees to be able to be too subjective with it. But no, I've always had great candidates and amazing candidates that were fine with the range, because it's not like we're paying pennies, right? Like, we're talking about the lowest paying position that we offer is $22 an hour, and you'd have like no experience for that position. And so when you're talking about having experience, you're talking $25+ an hour. And I'm putting that on the posting, right? So people that want $100,000 a year aren't going to apply for the job. And if they do, they're probably not my ideal employee because they don't know how to read.
Yeah.
Not to be rude about it. But if I say it's $25 an hour and you want $100,000, then why did you apply?
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, you can offer other incentives. It's just, it's tough because it's funny. It's actually not funny. It's interesting, I should say, that almost every, I guess, industry that I've talked to people about with inflation right now, everyone kind of feels like they're backed into a corner and feeling like they're pushed to go over budget because of the demand of more money just to survive. Especially, I live in Atlanta. I live in a city. It's not the most expensive city, but it's expensive. And so it's interesting to hear people in different industries. Everyone's kind of struggling with this. Everyone's struggling with, we don't have the money as a business to pay for the expectation, so we are understaffed. And that, I think that's kind of a conversation that you have to have when managing expectations with pay rate, because it's a real issue, especially these days.
I think when it comes to being understaffed, I think that you have to look at your company culture, because it doesn't just come down to pay rate. Now, pay rate is a big part of it. And I think that people should definitely take a look. If they cannot afford the pay increase for inflation, that they need to take a look at how their finances are operating in general. We would rather have slightly less profit and have a good team. That's not what we have to do right now because we've budgeted. But also, again, in a world where there's so many people that want to work virtually, it does not just come down to pay rate. It comes down to like the holistic view of what their working life is going to be.
Yeah. So it's more of like a full picture issue that I think people are failing to realize, correct?
I definitely think so. And it's all about how you present it and how you treat people as well. Because if you think that the ideal candidate is going to say, oh, I have to make $32 an hour, and you're offering $30 an hour, and they're going to turn that down because they need $2 more an hour, is very unlikely. It's not a significant difference. And especially if you lay out a pathway of like, okay, this is how I can get you to $32 an hour. I need you to get this certification or that certification. But this is a requirement for my company. But if you also show them, okay, well, working from home, you're not going to have to commute. You're going to have lower fuel costs, lower travel time. We also include, health benefits or this benefit or that benefit. And so the overall package is this. Also, we actually care that you're a human being. I don't think that if you had the whole package that you would be experiencing staffing issues.
Right. Because I think a lot of the times people get caught up in the kind of one-dimensional approach of why they're understaffed. And that's because other places can afford to pay more, when really it's kind of a multi-dimensional approach to having a great workplace. And an aspect is pay, but there's a lot more to it when it comes to managing your expectations.
Exactly.
Today's show is brought to you by Keeper, the one app to run your bookkeeping business. Keeper helps you get faster client responses with your own custom branded QuickBooks integrated client portal. Finally, you can say goodbye to those pesky spreadsheets full of uncategorized transactions. Keeper also helps you catch those embarrassing coding errors before your clients do. And with Keeper, you can generate beautiful custom reports that your clients will absolutely love to read. To find out more, go to keeper.app. That's keeper.app. Mention I Love Bookkeeping to get 20% off your first 3 months. Again, go to keeper.app to find out more. Thank you for listening.
So when it comes to hiring a bookkeeper for your company, employee versus subcontractor, is there a difference in pay rate, and how do you manage that?
Yeah. So with employees, we're obviously going to be paying more taxes for them. And we do also provide benefits to our employees. So the pay rate may be lower than with a subcontractor, because a subcontractor is going to be, a flat hourly or a flat fee, and they take care of all their taxes. So we definitely have paid subcontractors more because of that just kind of transactional nature of working with a subcontractor. Our regular bookkeeping subcontractors make the same as our employees. So technically for that, the employees make more because they also get the benefits. But for one-off contractors that we work with, cleanup subcontractors, those types of things would be at a higher rate.
Yeah. So what do you think, first, for a newer business owner who is looking to hire their first, what do you think is more, cost effective to hire, either a subcontractor or an employee?
Yeah, we talked about this a few of the little series ago, and I think I changed my mind mid-sentence. And I was like, no, you should definitely go with an employee. And I was like, well, but if you're in the beginning, you should go with a subcontractor first. So I do think subcontractors are easier as your first hire. But I do believe that you will want to grow into a company that has employees. And it may be that subcontractor that grows with you. But subcontractors are definitely easier to deal with as far as the transactional nature of things. But not always. They're going to have higher turnover. And then that's expensive as well. But it's going to be more expensive if you have turnover with employees. So I think working with subcontractors until you essentially have your shit together, I think is a good idea, because if you do lose them, it's easier to replace them. But if you're starting and you're a hot mess and, employees aren't going to want to stick around with you, that's going to be really expensive. So, I have to say team subcontractor, but I am still team core employees, when you get to that level.
Well, and it sounds like a real priority that people need to make is making sure you do have your shit together and having a discussion that not just focuses on your salary, but also the benefits of just working for your company, and being able to have that discussion along with the pay. I feel like that's something that people tend to forget.
Yeah. And I think that you don't necessarily have to have all of your processes in place and things like that. We've talked about that, where it's but just be transparent about it. When it comes to hiring, I think you do need to be more diligent about it from the start than probably a lot of people are, for it to go correctly, or you're going to be those, oh, I've been there, done that, and I made a ton of mistakes people, which is me, because I messed it up so many times. So now I'm telling you guys not to do what I did, and do try to have, the foundation of what you're doing and some processes in place beforehand, or be as transparent as possible with that person that you don't have your shit together. And then if that's the case, you may need to pay them more to be able to put up with you.
Yeah. How do you manage expectations and consistency as far as keeping up with the market when you already have current employees? Do you give everyone a raise at once to match what everyone is making? Or let's say you hired somebody in 2019 versus hiring somebody in 2022 when there's more inflation. How do you manage that?
We do annual increases for inflation, and as well as like just for performance. So we're considering that on an annual basis.
That's great. And I think that's something important that people need to remember, because inflation is real and the economy is always changing. And if there's one consistency in this lifetime, it's change. And so go for it.
I say it's also a retention, kind of strategy. I don't want to say it's strategy because I feel like I'm scheming, but no, it's about retention too, because if I let someone's pay go stagnant and it's actually better for them to find another job that pays more, then I'm going to be paying that higher rate to hire a new employee anyway. I might as well pay my current employee that increased rate that already has the experience that's significantly more valuable to me. And I think that's a mistake that people make, is all these new employees, especially in corporations, they come on at these higher inflation rates and they neglect their current employees and they're losing a massive amount of talent. So I think, if you could hire a new employee or increase the pay of your current employees, depending on what your company needs are, I would say go with taking care of the employees that you already have. They're going to be significantly more valuable to you.
Yeah. And that's important because I think part of managing expectations when it comes to pay is also managing what you currently have and looking at how to strengthen those relationships and strengthen your company culture and your overall cash flow that way. Because ultimately you don't want to be that company with that high turnover. You don't want people to not be happy in their workplace. And I think you kind of have to put yourself in your employee's shoes and ask yourself, what would you want? And what would the everyday employee want? It's when you look at the scenarios, it's like, I feel like the only two scenarios that you look at are, would you rather make a higher amount of money, but work 70, 80 hours a week and be totally miserable and be a slave to the corporation? Or would you rather make less money, but have a great work-life balance or a great company culture or actually really enjoy your job? A lot of people are going to take that second option.
Yeah.
The more so than you would think.
Definitely since COVID, because people were able to see like, oh, wait, I can actually have work-life balance. I didn't know this was real.
Yeah.
And I think too, that you need to not only put yourself in the shoes of your employees, but also your clients, because turnover is not good for clients either. They don't want to see an ever rotating, list of names coming through that's supposed to be helping them. So, retention is really good for retaining clients as well, and having a good, I think foundation of your business through your employees shows your clients that you are valuable. I think if you are kind of like, it's kind of like if you're like a mess behind the scenes, like how good are things up front, So I think focusing on making sure your operations are in order is going to allow you to better serve your clients.
Right. Well, and I think that's ultimately, that's the goal at the end of the day, right? Is to be able to better serve your clients and maintain this company culture and retention and ultimately make your employees happy. No one wants to work at a place where not only are they not being compensated well, but they're miserably unhappy. I think I've had jobs where I'm making good money and I'm totally miserable. And I've also had jobs where I'm not making as much money, but I enjoy it for the most part. And when you look, I think not to get like deep and philosophical, but I think when you look back on those experiences, you're going to be like, wow, I so enjoyed, even though I was making less money, I so enjoyed that experience and gained so much from that versus the experience of making more money and having a shitty time at your job.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think we've all been there.
Yeah. We hope you guys have enjoyed this episode on managing your pay expectations, especially when it comes to hiring. If you have comments, questions, concerns, or you just want to send us a nice message, we always love those. You can shoot us one at hello@ilovebookkeeping.com. Again, that's hello@ilovebookkeeping.com. It has been so much fun to be your co-hosts, and we've loved seeing your messages and interviewing you guys. And it's been such a great experience. We cannot wait to see what this season 3 of I Love Bookkeeping brings. But thank you so much for listening. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts for Android. We have new episodes out every Tuesday and Thursday, so don't forget to subscribe. My name is Hannah Robinson.
And I'm Melissa Honan.
And thank you for listening to the I Love Bookkeeping podcast.
I love bookkeeping. Here's a little shout to all my friends working hard at keeping the books. You want to change your life, you want to grow that biz, it's not as hard as it looks. Be a money guide, a profit coach, step up your game and see